Let's discuss the state of the Fed and rates with former Kansas City Fed President Thomas Honig. Thomas, great to have you with us.
It's glad to be with you. Thank you.
There's nothing wrong with not sharing your views as Fed chair, but at the same time, do you think that the Fed chair has an obligation in any way to the American public to give an indication of how he is thinking about inflation?
Well, I think certainly he can talk about how he feels about inflation, and he said, I'm committed to 2% target, and I'm going to get back there. And I think I'm a strong supporter for not giving forward guidance. It assumes the Fed knows things that it doesn't know. It ties its hands once it does give that forward guidance, even if circumstances change, it becomes more difficult. I think if there was an error in the last meeting, it was more of, we decided not to move, and here's why. And I know the media asked maybe 2 or 3 times to explain why they didn't move, and it was a little bit of a tap dance there, and that's where I think that maybe the real disappointment should be gained. But even then, the fact is, I don't think that the chairman should be anticipating what the next move would be by giving signals. I think that just confuses. And I just heard Steve say it adds basis points uncertainty. But when you give forward guidance and things start to change, you have just as much uncertainty. So the Fed should explain itself when it takes an action and should not try and anticipate those actions.
Yeah, I think that you put it in the better way that I was trying to get to, and that is, how can you have a Fed chair who says he's so committed to fighting inflation and bringing it down to the target rate of 2%, not acting, and then not explaining why. So do you think that that's going to come out in the coming weeks? And do you think that that's what Kevin Warsh should do to satisfy the markets in terms of the cries for, tell us what you're doing so we can believe in you, so you can restore Fed credibility? Or do you think that he has no obligation to do that?
Well, I think he's learned something from that. And I'm suspecting that the next time he will give fuller explanations as to why they take the actions they do. I don't think he has any idea right now where they're going to be because, as everyone said, they're waiting for more information at this point. So I think his obligation is when they act in September, here's why we did what we did. And the market over time will learn from that. What's important to them based on the actions they take. That speaks louder than words. And then how the market can anticipate the reliability of that going forward. And that's really where the rubber meets the road.
Do you think that the president should be calling the Fed chairman as maybe often as reports are saying?
Well, presidents have been calling Fed chairman for as long as there have been Fed chairmen and presidents. So that's not going to change. And I think what really matters, everyone is uncertain of what all this means because you can be sure this president's given the chairman his opinion. What really matters is how the chairman and the FOMC performs in the next several months, and that they in fact act and explain themselves, and that their explanation is consistent with the events of the time. If for example we have a very strong inflation numbers in both August and September, and we get to the September meeting and they decide not to do anything, they better have a pretty clear explanation. That's what matters, in my opinion.